Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles Rather. Today, I wanted to talk about a somewhat unknown visa option that could be a good uh, option for clients looking to relatively quickly come over to the US based on their business activities. The visa I'm talking about is the E-1. We do a lot of work with E2s, and I think the E2 visa is much more generally well known out there in the marketplace, maybe for a number of reasons. For those who don't know, the E2 is where you have to invest approximately $100,000 in a new or existing business in the U.S. And based on that investment, you're able to get a visa and residency, temporary residency here in the U.S. How long the residency lasts for is based on the country of origin, where you're coming from. The visa could last as long as 90 days to 5 years, but anytime you come to the U.S., you can stay here for up to 2 years, regardless of how long the visa is valid for. Now, the E-1 is related to it, but it's a different animal. The E-1 is based on trade between the company, between the country of origin of the applicant and the U.S. So with the E2, you don't have to necessarily show cross-border transactions, trade with your home country, et cetera, et cetera. It could be focused solely entirely on the U.S., or it could be focused on other third countries that are not related to your home country. With the E-1, that's a little different. With the E-1, we have to show prior to filing the existence of significant trade ties between the U.S. and your home country. Significant means more than 50%. So we have to show that the company has been in operation and the trade has been in existence, at least for a decent amount of time, and to show that that trade or the overall turnover between the home country and the U.S. exceeds 50% of the overall operations of the country, of the company. So unlike E2, you could get an E2 before you actually launch operations in the U.S. Let's say you have a startup business, you've just started it, bought the equipment, got the licenses, but you can't launch everything until you actually get the E2 and come to the U.S. That's permissible for an E2. With the E1, it's a little different, where you have to show the existence of those trade ties and those trade flows initially between your home country and the U.S. And then, if you're able to show that, then based on that, you can get the E1 visa. Once you get the E1 visa, it's very similar in terms of its advantages and benefits and how long it's valid for between the E1 and the E2. There's really not many differences there between the two visas. But again, the big difference to think about is with the E1, you've got to show the existence of those trade ties first. So from our experience, I think E1s are much more popular. It depends on the country, but I would say with Canada and the US, given the extensive and significant trade ties, and given the proximity of the US market to Canada, I would say a large number of Canadian companies have the majority of their turnover with the US, just given how close the two countries are. Whereas if you have a country, I don't know, maybe in Asia, maybe in Europe, it's quite possible the majority of your transactions are with other neighboring countries and you can't meet that 50% threshold. So that's one issue that has to be closely analyzed, as well as some other aspects in order for you to have a successful E1 petition. If you have any questions about the E1 or the E2 or any other visa options you're considering, best choice is probably to reach out to us, have a consultation where we can go over all of your plans, review your business operations and activities, and give you the best advice to make your transition to the US.